All of these things are going to help you to reduce that likelihood of FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. If you've heard of that term, let me know in the comments. I think it's such a good term, and I did not come up with it. I won't take credit for it, but it's really good. Hi lovelies, it's Jess and welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for this video. I think that I sort of do an end of year reflection around December every year, and I know I filmed a really special video a couple of weeks ago, but this video is still adding on from that, and I want to share with you 5 things to leave behind in 2020. In saying that, I also want to make a note that these are not little things. They're things that perhaps have been with us since childhood that we've taken on or modeled from the people around us as we've gotten older. So I think it's really important to set reasonable expectations and goals here and say that these are 5 things that we really need to be more mindful of going forward into a new year that we're now committed to letting go of, and begin that process now, because why not? 2020 has been a huge year, a massive learning curve for me. It certainly brought a lot of things up for me that I needed to be more aware of and work through. So I hope that you find this video really helpful, powerful, freeing, and let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. But let's get straight into the first thing that I really invite you to start working on and leaving behind as we enter into 2021. The first thing to let go of is trying to be perfect and thinking you are not enough. So as someone who has struggled with perfection in the past, and still from time to time, I've come to understand and accept a few things about the pursuit of perfection. So first off, it's important to realize that the pursuit of perfection is pointless. It is irrelevant. It has nothing to do with feeling happy in your life and building a life that you can really enjoy. Not only does perfection not contribute to long-lasting success and our happiness, it's also important to realize that it's often crippling and it's a really negative kind of aspiration to have. And this is something that took most, if not all, of my 20s to really understand. And I've even filmed a web series, Mindful, if you've seen it already. One of the episodes, I had the pleasure of speaking with a psychologist and filming that session where we talked all about perfection. It was actually a perfectionist workshop, and she broke down the definition of perfection and why it is that we have this tendency to feel like we need to achieve this gold standard of success that, if anything, doesn't actually exist. So you can be in search of excellence and you can be in search of achievements, but to be in search of perfection is not possible because it doesn't exist. So if you want to go and check out that video, I'll leave it as a link down below or a little clickable card up above, and I strongly suggest you watch it because I personally found it to be very beneficial. It's also important we realize that the thing about this type of external manifestation is that it can never be achieved because it's not real. So after reading up on perfection, learning about it, working with psychologists and experts, I believe that the key to long-lasting success is to embrace imperfections because it gives us the freedom of true self-expression. In fact, it's been said that the antidote to this perfect myth is celebrating imperfection. It's the imperfections that foster human connection most. So Brené Brown, one of my favorite authors, she talks a lot about the importance of embracing imperfection. There's a book she's written called The Gifts of Imperfection. It was the first book that I read of her work, and I highly recommend you check it out as well. It's a really beautiful read and very powerful, very freeing. But not only do we need to embrace imperfection in order to be vulnerable and foster more human connection, embracing imperfection is actually a form of self-love and self-acceptance, and that's something that I'm really trying to practice more of in my life. And even thinking about interpersonal relationships here, if you consider your relationship with your best friend, it's probably all of those imperfect moments that mean the most to you. All of the self-deprecating humor, or the times when things didn't go to plan, or when someone had a challenging time and they shared that with you. That's what builds that connection. So trying to be perfect, what's the point? We wouldn't expect our friends to be perfect. Why do we expect ourselves to be perfect? The next thing to leave behind this year is self-criticism and ruminating on past mistakes rather than using them as learning curves and lessons. We're all human and there's no point dwelling on things from the past. So if there's something you wish you would have done differently, make a mental note of it and remember how you want to be doing things moving forward. I personally think that we're always learning from our experiences and everything happens for a reason, so I don't believe in regrets. There's nothing that I have or haven't done in my life that I regret, and it could be a conflict with a friend or a colleague. It could be that you weren't there for someone that you wish you were, but rather than ruminating on the past or dwelling on the past, it's about using that as a lesson or a learning curve and being more intentional with how you want to go about things in the future so that you know that you're not going to repeat that. I think that if we were repeating the same patterns, then perhaps that's maybe where regret could come in. But if you're utilizing your past to inform your future, then there's really no need for regret or being really hard on yourself. And because I know a lot of you are students or you're focusing on trying to build up your career and your future, even just being mindful that if you didn't get that job or you didn't perform as well as you'd hoped on a test or assignment, that there are so many paths that lead to the same destination. So not to regret how you performed in the past or any opportunities that you were not able to seize, because to be honest, it just wasn't meant to be that way. But to not think that the past defines your future either, because we're always writing how we want our future to look. Now, the third thing to let go of is FOPO. I love this term. It's fear of other people's opinions. So it's not letting others or your perceived expectations of others determine your worth. Now, the number one regret of the dying is that they wish that they lived a life that was true to themselves and not to others. So there are people that have said that they didn't even fulfill half of their dreams. And I would never want for my perceived expectations of others to dictate the kind of life that I live and the choices that I make. Because the most important thing we remember is that you have this God-given gift of free will. You come into this life is your gift to do with it as you please. So making sure that you're not thinking about pleasing other people when trying to figure out what you want in your life. It is your life, and I know it's easier said than done when you've got family or pressure from parents or society or your peers. It is hard to steer in a straight line and, pop those blinkers on and make sure that you are doing what is right for you, a life that is aligned with your core values. But there are certainly ways of giving yourself that added support. For me, it's been having a mentor, a coach, a psychologist. It's journaling, it's getting clear on my core values, it's associating with friends that support me and don't expect anything of me. It's unconditional friendship and unconditional love. All of these things are going to help you to reduce that likelihood of FOPO, fear of other people's opinions. If you've heard of that term, let me know in the comments. I think it's such a good term, and I did not come up with it. I won't take credit for it, but it's really good. The fourth thing I'm trying to let go of and hopefully get rid of is taking on too many tasks and overextending myself. So when you say yes to something, you're also saying no to something else, and this is something that I remember my coach telling me earlier this year, and it really resonated with me. So I found myself taking on way too much at different points throughout this year, and each time I would say yes to another work commitment, I was actually saying no to myself. No to self-care, no to having a day off, no to resting, no to having free time to spend on my hobbies and being creative. Saying no is a form of self-care, and we often overestimate how much we can do in a day that we end up taking on too much. There's a great quote I came across by one of my favorite authors, Greg McKeown, who wrote the book Essentialism, and he says that we often overestimate how much we can do in a day and underestimate how much we can do in a decade. So I'm really trying to embody the spiritual powers of the turtle right now and actually just pace myself more through life and not be in such a hurry. I don't know why, but for me, I tend to have this fire lit up within me, but it comes from a sense of urgency as opposed to passion, where I try and get everything done as quickly as possible. And even the projects that I take on, I tend to take something on the second that I finish one other thing. So if you're like that, if you can relate to what I'm saying, we can empathize, I really encourage you to think more broadly about how much time we have in our lives, that nothing is urgent, that you want to be able to enjoy the process and the journey and not just be in this constant state of output, as we've been talking about on my channel for a little while now. So yeah, I really like that quote that we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a decade. And the fifth thing to leave behind in 2020 is self-comparison, or comparing ourselves to someone else's social media highlights. Social media makes this a lot harder to do, but we need to remember that what we see online is highly curated. So Adam was reading a book recently called Sapiens, and there was something in the book that he read to me that really resonated with me, and this challenge of self-comparison that's very much precipitated by social media and what we consume online. So in this book Sapiens, and if you've read it, let me know in the comments down below, I'll let him know. But in this book, it was talking about how we used to grow up in small villages or communities. So we really didn't have that many people to compare ourselves to. There might have been 5 other people the same age as you, or the same gender and age as you. So compared to those other 5, you were reasonably good looking, or reasonably smart, or reasonably creative. Now with social media, we are seeing the best of every area in life. We're seeing the prettiest, the smartest, the most creative, the richest. So our ability to compare is not just to a few people in our life, in our immediate life, but if anything, we're comparing ourselves to everybody in the entire world, of which I don't even know the total population of this earth, but that's a lot of people. It's multiple billions of people. Oh, and speaking of self-comparison, I don't think I've mentioned her work before on this channel, but Lucy Sheridan, please go and check her out. I actually follow her on Instagram as well, but she wrote a book called The Comparison Cure, and it's all about how to identify what kind of comparison profile we tend to take on and how to address that, where it comes from, addressing the inner critic and why we feel like we need to be more, why we don't feel enough, and why we tend to gravitate towards comparing ourselves to certain people and not others. It's really helpful. It's a great read, and there's a lot of practical work throughout it as well, so different exercises. So check that out. I'll leave it as a link in the description box down below. But let me know which things you plan to let go of for 2020, moving forward into a new year, a much brighter year. Let's all hope. Thinking good vibes right now. But let me know if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and of course turn on post notifications so you know when I post up my next video. And I'm gonna leave all my resources, as I usually do, in the description box down below. So if you want some help on your studies and productivity and organization, I've got my digital study planners, I've got my stationery, which is behind me, Educationery, and also my study skills book, the Amazon bestseller, the High School Survival Guide. So check them out as well. But otherwise, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'm really curious to find out if these 5 things that I am personally trying to let go of going into a new year, whether they might also be things that you're looking forward to leaving behind and working through as well. So let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you all very soon with another video. Mwah! Bye!